high resolution camera, a Shricam SV019, a 19. That's their high resolution from a couple of years ago. It's 2 meg, and I had an older one that I didn't like that much, but I bought a new one because I still have it connecting to the same software. You have to look at what software they're connecting to nowadays. This one did the Android interface and did notifications, but I put it in, started having trouble with it, and finally it would reinitialize itself periodically particularly when it's warm outside, and I started seeing other cameras dropping off, and so I tinkered around with it and eventually reduced my cameras down from probably 18 to 15, and everything's great. Everybody's fine, everybody's happy. So you get weird characteristics, particularly dropping off and resetting and doing crazy stuff, and it's strictly just too much traffic. Now these are on VIF, the 19s are on VIFs, and they have the .264, H.264 compression, and H.265. I don't know if this version does, but the later ones do. So, pretty good.
Are those the most popular compression schemes for those kind of cameras?
Yeah, I think OnVIF may be associated, the OnVIF family, I think they use .264 and .265, and iSpy supports it. I guess it's pretty popular. They support OnVIF, so they just about have to support it. The OnVIF standard is not totally standard, so if you have like a phone thing that's for Shricam, you probably want to stick with Shricam cameras because you need to tinker with them sometimes.
We brought some cookies. I'm gonna have one of those cookies.
Oh yeah, there's a toll charge for that.
Okay, Art.
Art, who are you?
Me next? Okay.
I guess
well,
you're next.
I spent the last week setting up, not the whole week, but principal activity was setting up streaming video on Raspberry Pi cameras. And it works very nice. That's the good news. The bad news is when you have 4 of them running simultaneously, your router apparently suffers an MI or the equivalent to it, and
Is that mission in action? MI?
yeah, right.
Myocardial infarction.
Okay.
And drops all Wi-Fi connections until you unplug it, let it cool down, and then plug it back in again.
There's a man. The router? You've got to unplug the router? Cool.
Yeah, the problem is that the traffic level I actually have 6 streaming cameras right now, and the traffic level apparently overheats the router. So the upshot of it is, this yank, the upshot of it is I'm now looking for a new router. I've got one of those POS models you get from Cincinnati Bells.
What does POS mean?
You know.
Piece of stuff.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought.
So at any rate, I had been thinking about a new router anyway. So I have a recommendation of a Ubiquity of some sort or another.
Ubiquities are nice. They're a little on the expensive side for home use.
Well, I've got 23 simultaneous connections, of which 6 of them are streaming cameras. 12 of them are cameras, but only 6 of them are streaming. So the problem I've got is, and I'm adding IoT stuff, frequently. So the problem is the number of connections and bandwidth, and I'm generating smoke is what it comes down to. So I'm thinking that I'm probably gonna have to go to a second router and put one network for IoT stuff and another for, you know, just ordinary garden variety streaming video and so forth and so on. And my wife uses a lot of YouTube, so, and you know, there are technical problems, and then there are interpersonal problems. Okay?
Yeah.
The technical problems tend to be easier than the interpersonal problems. So,
They're less complicated.
well, yes, less impactful also. So, at any rate, so that's what I've been doing, and any recommendations you can make for going up to maybe 50 wireless connections, I'll be happy to entertain.
So,
Timer. Reset your router twice a day for 1 minute. Those $10 electronic timers.
I've got one of those. Actually, I
good?
shared one of those, but when I do a reset that's only a minute long, apparently that's not enough to cool it down enough. So,
Okay.
So, I've got an ASUS router at home that is the same chipset as a TP-Link C6 or C7, which is a $45 router.
mhm.
It keeps up with 20 connected devices and
Well, I've got
multiple-
23 right now, so.
Yeah, I've got multiple people streaming Netflix through it as well. I'm very happy with it. I rebooted it 8 months ago, maybe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it turns out that I didn't need to. It was actually that my CBT supplied modem crapped out.
Do you have to do anything special since you're not using the, say, Bell's ITEL or
No,
whatever?
I just took it back to them and said, here, I don't use this.
But when you plug the ASUS in, you have to do something different to make it work.
No, it just comes up.
Well, you shut off DHCP if you're using the Cincinnati Bell router, right? Because you do the DHCP
I got
on.
rid of the Cincinnati Bell router altogether.
What do you
but
do
you can
for
have
what do you
multiple.
do for the
I-
DSL modem?
I have a modem, which is a separate piece, and I then had the Zyxel POS. I'm with Optics. They don't
Oh.
have a Zyxel.
Unfortunately, I don't have Optics in
Yeah.
my area. All I've got is 5 megabit down DSL.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah, right.
You're with me.
You
I
don't have
had
that
to
either.
get rid of theirs because at the time my kids were fairly young and I logged into the router and went to set a password and you couldn't. I'm like, that's not happening, not with my kids.
Yeah.
I know what they do.
So anyway, that's my adventure for the week is smoking a router. So I'm going to be shopping for routers and so forth.
The ASUS is nice.
I have a ASUS in California, and I smoke that one also. So well, I have a lot of
Aren't they arc
connections.
light?
Yeah, really.
I have a lot of connections. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not gonna smoke that. No. Oh, that's
You think that was a joint? I don't know
You're
what
rolling a
quality
little blunt
joints
there.
you smoke.
Pass
That's
it
a-
around.
I know, it's like, okay.
This meeting has taken a turn for the
That's right, we got
worse.
pretty liberal here.
I've already seen that. I don't need to see that again.
Take a hit off. I mean, I already seen it.
That's what it looks like.
That'll really light you up.
I'm Leroy. I did a lot of stuff the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Some of it I was going to talk about last week, but Marcus did such a great job.
Yeah.
Yay! So
Thanks for saying that took so long.
And updated
You
his
educated me
corner.
on at so
no,
many
Marcus
levels.
did a great job. I didn't need to talk about my stupid pumpkin, but I have my stupid pumpkin with me now, so we'll talk about that later. Your turn.
We skipped
him, he came
Marcus.
in late.
Well, Marcus came in late. He's the last
We have to
one
circle
now.
around
Oh,
again.
whoa.
Sorry,
Oh, we
Marcus.
take 2 laps?
Sorry, Marcus.
Come
Oh,
drag
me?
it.
Oh.
You could go ahead if you want
I'm
to.
Mark, I see you brought that, you're gonna bring that up, because
Yeah.
Mark was asking about the, you were asking about the BOM for the, bill of material for that project,
Yeah,
and so I had already, believe it or not, I had already done one.
The router changed. We're on the Netgear now.
I got it. I saw you. I thought you danced around over there.
Yeah, I'm.
I can't share. Why is that? Oh, we got to click over here. Now you can share. Okay.
And there it is.
So in Marcus's folder on the meeting announcements, I mentioned it earlier before you came in. He's published, updated his documents.
And also, there's another one that actually shows all the components, actually the price.
Those are PDF? This
That's
file?
a PDF, yeah, that's a PDF, yeah. And there's another document in there that should, I think it's called BOM.
Even showed a picture of his cute
Yeah,
dog.
that's it. A picture of the dog.
He's got something on his collar.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
If you can blow it up. What I basically,
You gotta blow it up.
yeah.
You've got control.
On the right hand side, there's a price for every item. So I actually went through and
With the
each
cost over there.
Yeah, put the cost over there. Put some of the stuff is just
You have a car and a checkout button, a car,
up.
everything.
Right.
It links into Amazon or
No,
eBay.
not quite. No, I'm sorry.
you get a piece of the action for everyone else.
Asking a little too much here. The ID, of course, won't mean anything to you on the right, left hand side. That didn't mean to you. But every item that I create, I give it some type of ID. So when it's sending the data, I can determine basically what it is if I can remember, which I usually don't. But the components, where it shows the components, each component, like the top item is that Whisper node, that's that LoRa item, then the MCU, the 8266 MCU, blah, blah, blah. So, and then the price, the cost is over there, it doesn't have a dollar sign, but that's actually the cost, the individual cost.
That's in units of dollars, I
Yeah,
assume?
yeah, it's units a dollar, and if you go down to the PC board, it was actually less than $3 a piece, but that's, I sort of rounded it off to about $3 a piece. So that's up there, and it's I think it's one other document up there. But anyway, it's all up in that folder. Thanks, Jim, for telling me about that. I forgot all about it. I would have forgot to put it in there. Yeah.
So since we can't see the cost over there,
Yeah, yeah.
what was the grand total?
I didn't. I just did individual.
Okay.
So like each item, for example, that first item would be 20, 26, 25, 28, 30, $38. But and the reason why is, of course, that LoRa module is $20. $20. And of course, if I use, which I'm not using the wall transformers as much anymore, that was also $10. So those two items is the bulk of the cost.
Yeah.
So if you can get reduce those two, you can really get down to almost nothing. And like I say, the USB wall transformers I'm basically not using much anymore. Yeah, and I showed you that little thing I plugged directly into the wall, and I'm using some of those in a lot of places where I have some of that hooked up. So that's that. So, and I'll mark it. Oh, while we're here, I'll talk about the website a little bit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You want to take it? Go ahead.
No, you go ahead and do it. If you can go to my folder, go back to my folder.
This is Wix.com? Or?
Yeah, the
Okay,
Wix.com.
so I go down and go to Marcus's folder
Go to
there.
go to my folder.
This is just the meeting announcement.
Yeah, if you go to my folder, there's the link in there it's a Google Doc, so you don't have to type it in. Leroy probably remembers it by heart.
I know.
I can't.
I don't remember it by heart.
What is it? Where
let's
you want me to
see.
go?
Go down. I'm not sure what it looks like. It should say website. In one of the folders, it should say website. You can scroll down probably.
I would add whatever. Wix has an app as well
Let's not scroll.
for your phone
It's
that
it's
sort of
delayed.
works
It
like
may be
WhatsApp,
broke.
and you could actually send messages
Yeah, they might
around like
click
we've
on
been
that
doing.
folder.
ATC website, is that?
Yeah, that's just a
probably it.
folder, and then the links and the link, you can do that doc, that's a
I
bigger
drive
doc,
past it
just
all
open
the
that
time.
document, and then there's a link in there, just double click on it.
Did you make good progress? I
A
haven't
little,
checked lately.
a little bit, you always think you can get more done than you can, of course, I'm sure you've been.
Oh, Marcus, you got your Chromebook.
It's not
I was
Chrome.
being bad. I was just being bad.
It's a window.
Beating on him.
That's why Steve's here, that's right, never mind.
Ask for respect.
That's right. Double click on that. That's just so. Anytime I do an update, it'll be.
Oh,
If it'll bring it up, I guess it will.
It probably just opened in another tab.
There
Yep.
you go. Yeah, there you go. So, as we talked about, Leroy identified Wix as a sort of good place to go, and so far it seems to be the right solution to our issue of having a public-facing website plus a place where we can set up forms. All I've done so far is, if you can shrink that, maybe you can shrink that down and see a little
okay,
bit more.
just a
but-
second. Let me save this.
Right now, it's a lot of trial and error trying to just learn the software. I mean, it's just, jumping through the hoops of the software itself to just trying to figure out how to navigate around and add a little here and there.
Control minus.
Probably if you go to the browser, you can actually, yeah, there you go. So that's sort of how I see the sort of not launch page, the landing, the first page is to have the latest news will be the upcoming meeting. We'll have to get with Jim and see how we're going to keep this all updated. And then it has the last three, and this is not really showing it right, but it has the last three posts, and the post will be basically coming from a form. So it'll show the post automatically for us. And it's a pretty powerful utility. And I'm not really going into trying to do everything manually. I'm trying to take advantage of the WYSIWYG tools that allow you to can do things quick. So it's not a big thing to keep this thing maintained, because that's when it's going to start losing any updates and stuff like that. If we got to maintain it, because it's hard. So anyway, that's just you can, if you're, I guess you can post that link on our
Yeah.
group notes, and then anytime you have anything. Right now, I'm not taking in too much input right now, but as we get farther along, I'll start taking more input out. We'll do a review when we come in and take more input. But right now, I'm still struggling just to try to do a little here and a little there. So. And much won't happen next week, because I actually, as of Saturday, I go on vacation and be gone for a week. So next week I won't be here. Just so you know.
Where are you going?
Florida, Orlando. And then we're gonna drive over San Augustine, visit
Yeah.
some friends.
Down in the right-hand corner, there's a little chat box.
That thing?
Yeah.
I think that's actually the connect with Wix. Oh.
It should actually. I just sent a message to it. It should have actually.
Oh, really? Okay, I thought it was actually, when I see it, I thought it was to actually hit their tech
No.
support.
That?
You can't find it.
That?
That's the one, yeah.
Their chat feature leaves some to be desired, but
Well, we gotta.
there's a little
gotta
chat
slowly
box
in.
right there, and it syncs to the app, so you can we can send messages back and forth as long as you got the app going.
Well, I'm a little confused here. How come there are two cursors up there?
Because one's mine.
You can curse him.
Because he's casting to my screen.
See, mine's the big cursor.
I understand, but I was wondering whether the big cursor was actually doing anything, or
Well,
whether
I
it was
clicked
the
on
other
something,
cursor
but-
that was active on that screen.
Click up there.
It's both. The click actually occurs
Ah.
halfway between the two.
On average.
Yeah.
I'm getting something. It's a
Some-
smart way to do business.
I don't know. I was sending messages around playing around with it.
We'll check that out, yeah.
We'll figure it out. We're not there yet. Cool. You're up.
I'm Mark. I've got about 3 things going on, and all of them right now are kind of half-baked, so a little uncomfortable with that. I've got to make some progress on some things. And once I do, I'll have a better report.
Vicente, Vicente, hello. Last week I was working in the landscape, trimming bushes and doing a lot of water jet cleaning. I have a lot of projects waiting for my attention, but maybe in a couple of days I'll be again in the hoverboard motors and this kind of stuff. Maybe have something for next week.
I'm Mike, glad to be here.
Present? Okay.
I'm Steve. I brought a Raspberry Pi 4 gig if anybody wants to see one. There's no way to tell it from the other Raspberry Pi.
As pointed out. As
I-
pointed out by me.
Yeah.
And the USB device
Oh, you
in
can't
there
tell.
is,
Seriously?
It's got 2 Logitech unified receiver for a A400 keyboard.
You want to see it, Mark?
Yes, yes, yes.
Marcus needs to
you
see
can run
stuff.
Windows on that.
But why
Windows
would you-
IoT.
Yeah, yeah. Now, what do you mean you can't tell the difference between the other?
You can't tell the difference between the 4 gig.
Oh,
and 1
oh,
gig.
okay. I thought you meant the previous version. I was like,
Yeah.
I looked
What
all
is there,
over it.
1, 2, and a 4?
Mhm. Yeah, and this is the 4. I had to get that thing shipped from England. I couldn't
They're
find
not
them.
stocking them locally at all?
They are, but
running out. They
not-
seem to get 'em.
you gotta like be right there when they bring them
When
out.
they put them on the shelf, you gotta have your
Yeah.
hand there.
Yeah, because there's somebody snagging them up.
Throw a few
Yeah, so-
elbows.
This is the $55 version. So far, I haven't put heat sinks on it, but I'm going to. I ran it for an hour or so this afternoon, and it doesn't seem to get particularly warm to me, but I wasn't actually pushing it to do anything. In that this has gigabit Ethernet. My intention on this is to set it up to be my backup MX server.
How much RAM?
4 gigs.
For?
So the Wi-Fi on this is strictly 2.4?
Yeah, it's got five.
It's AC, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
it's 5 gigahertz.
I assume it's both.
It's both, yeah.
How much did the shipping cost?
I don't know, $7 maybe.
More than the tax.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think I had to pay that.
Pay taxes. You didn't have to pay VAT on it?
I don't think so. Hmm. It is decidedly quicker. Just you can feel it on a keyboard. It is quicker. Logitech K400 keyboard.
You have
This
But it
one.
won't stay plugged in, fit in the box.
You have an ARM V8 A 64-bit quad core, GPU Broadcom Video Core 6, a 2.45 gigahertz 802.11b GNAC, 1, 2 or 4 gig models, Bluetooth 5, Bluetooth low energy, 40-pin header, and more.
Yep.
It's a pretty impressive little thingamabob.
I saw something they're having some issues with the USB port. Did you see that?
Yeah, I luckily bought the power supply with it,
Yeah.
so I don't have to deal with that. But yeah, this is one with the broken USB-Cs. I have a personal opinion that USB-C is broken from the
Yeah.
beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
The pins are too tiny for the amount of current they say that thing can carry, but I'm outvoted by a lot of other companies.
There's a lot of other people selling hardware.
Oh, yeah. Well, our Dell laptops at work, we have Thunderbolt USB-C docking stations that they charge through. And there's like 26 pins in there or something. And it's this big. And these things draw 4 or 5 amps. I don't care if it's spread out over 5 pins. And we have already had problems with the docking stations and the computers. I went and got my own laptop because I didn't like theirs.
All right.
Okay, I'm here. I'm Mike. You guys are talking about all your projects. At my current rate of project completion, I figure I can't die until I finish all of them, and I'm likely to live forever at my current pace.
I think that'd be all of us.
You're immortal.
No, I'm just slow.
I actually went through and pruned a bunch of my projects this week. Just stuff that I know I'll never do. That's okay.
The problem is they tend to proliferate faster than you complete them.
We ready to see my pumpkin?
Sure.
Good pumpkin.
Do I need to move out of the way?
Nah.
There are any flying parts going to happen here?
Not that I am aware of. So this is this board right here is an Arduino Uno style. It's got an Atmega 328P chip on it, so it's programmable. And of course, I popped the chip out and popped it into an Arduino and programmed it. The board was designed by a Patrick Mitchell off of Kickstarter, and I have bought a bunch of his stuff. He did the Little Buddy Talker and some of the other speech things. This one here is a practical joke machine. It's called the Troll. So it's set up so that you can low power hide it somewhere, and it'll make noises and do goofy stuff. I got mine early because I said that I thought I could port the Little Buddy Talker code over and make this an actual thing to actually do. And then I got to playing with it, and I printed a 3D pumpkin. So,
Oh, that's 3D printed?
that is 3D printed. That is
That-
12 hours of 3D
I was
print.
going to say, that's
goodness.
a lot of stuff.
That is 12 hours of 3D printed goodness. I designed the case too. That case did not come with it. I designed the case.
That's not 3D printed, though, right?
The case, yeah.
Cases also?
Yeah. But that's only an hour, 45 minutes worth of print.
Now, did you magic marker the face, or did you change elements? In
That is actually, so the original design, I didn't make the original pumpkin design. I found it on Thingiverse. The face is actually embedded inside the layers.
Mm-hmm.
So when it glows, you get the eyeballs. One of the other backers said, "Why don't you paint on it?" So it's just opaque black paint, and it actually turned out it looks a little bit better that way. So there is a PIR sensor in it. There's a NeoPixel ring inside the pumpkin head, so it will randomly pick a color to do. It randomly picks one of 8 sounds. There's 58 sounds built into it. It will randomly pick one of 8 sounds that are the spooky sounds, and it'll scare you. Or it's supposed to scare you. If it doesn't detect anything, the pumpkin will just be orange, like a pumpkin.
Is one of the scary sounds I'm pregnant?
No, no.
Too much.
Coming from you, Steve, that would be really scary.
Excuse me.
So,
Thingiverse, huh?
so basically,
Do we need to close the door?
I took one of those. You know, you could at Halloween time you can buy pumpkins that scream and do all kinds of crazy stuff. I did the same thing in 12 hours worth of work.
And how much you say the material for the 3D print? I was amazed that.
So the pumpkin actually costs 7 cents to print.
Does that make sense, Steve?
Wow.
Is that the material? Is that?
Well, that's the
I
wrong.
don't know.
That doesn't count the electricity.
Oh, no,
I was
I'm
gonna
just
say.
talking about the material that you have to
Yeah,
purchase.
it, according to my slicer, it was 7 cents worth of material, and the case was less than a penny.
Wow.
It told me it was a penny because it can't do less than a penny.
So what is that? Is that polyethylene or what? What is that material?
PLA, yeah. But that's basically that's my pumpkin. Woo!
Does that just reset it, or does it reset it to a random?
Random. Every time it goes, every time it goes off, it will randomly pick a color and it will randomly pick a sound. I've only got 3 colors in there: red, green, and blue. So I
But
didn't
you got
get over.
28 sounds?
I didn't get
Or orange
creative
bread.
with the colors so much as I got 8 sounds that it could pick out. So
But I thought you said there were a lot more sounds.
there are, and some of the other programs that I did take advantage of some of the other sounds, and some of the other sounds aren't appropriate for company.
Oh, really?
Some of the other sounds are it could get quite annoying, you know. The original thing was it was a prank deal where you could just okay. So you could just plug it in. There's actually a speaker header in here as well so you could plug a speaker in and you could leave this.
So what we're hearing is that little speaker over
That's
there.
a little speaker right there. Yeah.
It's a lot of obnoxious for a little space.
It's got an external trigger, which is what the PIR is hooked up to. It's got all the analog pins, which is actually what the
Lights.
lights.
So the black disc, was that printed also?
Yeah,
But not continuously with the pumpkin?
correct. I
So
super glued that to the bottom of the
You
pumpkin.
glued that on
Yeah.
afterwards.
Wow.
I took a little bit of super glue. Pop.
So the speaker there is wirelessly connected to here?
It's got the. I'll pass it around.
Oh. There's a wire sneaking in the backside over there.
There are 2 audio jacks. So actually you can run music into it. So like the intent was this was going to be for pranking. So you could run your PA system or something into it and then randomly have it screaming or shouting things that it shouldn't shout over top of your PA system. But it would still be playing the music so that it would be harder to figure out where it was coming from. Which,
Devious.
because it's programmable though, because it's got the Atmega 328p in it, and because it's got the analog pins and an external trigger pin, I mean, you can do pretty much whatever with it. I hooked up I've got a video. I could probably pull it up of the little buddy talker going into it, and then it will make a red alert sound, and the little buddy talker will talk over top of it and say red alert, and it all comes out of one little speaker. The wires they're kind of short, but you can still kind of open it up and see.
Yeah. When did you start on this?
I've actually had this for about a month, and as far as I know, nobody else has gotten theirs yet.
Okay.
So
Are the audio samples on the 328 itself, or
no,
is it triggering?
there's another little chip in there. It's the same little chip that the little buddy talker uses.
Now,
So
does
you
that
just-
board come pre-assembled, or did you have
Both.
You can buy it as loose parts?
Yeah, it was a little cheaper to buy it loose, but
And you got to surface solder it?
no, it's actually through hole.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't do that. He sent me one that was already assembled because I just kind of needed to jump in there and get some software written up. That is not it.
So this gray piece right here, you super glued that,
Yep,
and you printed that independently of.
yep, on a different printer even.
So how thick are the walls of the pumpkin there? I assume it's hollow, right?
The pumpkin is
Pretty
hollow.
thick.
It's actually, when you get around to it, I cut a hole out of the back because I was going to run the wires out the back,
Yeah.
and you can see how thick it is. It's actually not that bad.
At least a fourth of an inch.
Really? I mean, if you had printed the thing solid.
Maybe not a fourth.
Oh, it was designed hollow.
Oh, okay.
Little intro.
Maybe more like a sixth or an eighth.
Skip ahead.
An eighth or so.
It's an unusual measure.
Yeah.
Comes from the old English.
So
Trying to gauge it with my eye.
this one here is, there's a little buddy talker chip here
Yeah.
hooked up to a nano,
Okay,
and I'm using the nano over I2C because it's not a serial device. It's a SPI device, and the SPI bus is already being used, and he didn't give me enough breakout pins to do anything else with it. So I've got another microcontroller right here, and that's the troll, and that's the little buddy talker, and that's an Arduino Nano, and that's the speaker, and this is me
just
talking.
a fun little project. This is the troll. This is a little buddy talker. This is an Arduino Nano. The little buddy talker is connected to the Nano the standard way you would over SPI. The Nano is connected to
I just said all that.
with over I2C, and the little buddy talker is fed into the troll's audio jack, and the speaker is connected. So I hit the button, the troll sends a message over I2C to the Nano tells the little buddy talker to do stuff, and then the troll makes noise.
Yeah. When I looked at it, it didn't look like it was that solid.
So you hear that? The little buddy talker says red alert, and the
I set it up
troll
for
made
red
sounds.
alert.
Also, the troll only makes sounds. It
Yeah.
doesn't make, okay. That's all.
I will share the code. This is just a real
But that's, you see, I've got the little buddy talker connected into the same jack.
how to get a
So what do the dip switches and the micro switches do? I didn't quite catch that.
That's because I didn't say.
Oh, okay.
You're going to dig
In that
it
case,
deep.
Well,
what
you
do
said
they
you
do?
pushed on your audio there, you said you push the button and,
Yeah.
but
So there is a user programmable button on the board that I programmed so every time I push it, it would say red alert.
okay.
I mean, you know, nothing real fancy there. The dip switches, they're also user programmable, and depending upon what sketch I'm using, I wrote a sketch where I've got 3 different things going on. You could select any of the 3 things to happen with the dip switches. I've got another sketch where there's I've made 16 sounds available, and you can select any of the 16 sounds using the dip switches. So you could take the 4 dip switches and actually do up to 16 different things with it.
What's the photoresistor there for?
Okay, the photoresistor, that is one of the, because of the original intent was to do something like a prank. So he put a photoresistor on A0. So if you turn off, you set it up, you turn off the lights, it waits for the lights to come back on, and then it'll scream or holler or say a bad word or something. And that's one of the sketches that I actually made. I put on the dip switch so you could select if you turn the lights on or off or whatever. Another use for the dip switch was actually for this sketch that's running. If your sensor, you've got the external trigger pin, and if your sensor is always sending a high, so it would trigger when it goes low. So I set one of the dip switches so you could change it. So if your sensor is always sending a low, if it triggers when it goes high, so because it's programmable, you can make it do the dip switches. Basically, the dip switches are there for whatever you feel like making them do.
So you've set them as the various input strategies for that.
Oh.
Oops.
Better make another pumpkin.
Actually, that is amazingly durable.
I am not making another. I am not spending another 12 hours making
It's
a pumpkin.
solid. It's
It's
solid.
definitely solid.
Yep, the pumpkin itself was actually solid. I cut a hole out of the back using a little rotary tool, and I used a stepper bit to put the hole for the nose. So
that's where the PIR is?
yep.
It's the nose.
And
Oh,
because
that's not part of the molding then.
and because it's white, it's hard enough to see.
Yeah, it definitely is.
That's why you kept waving right in front of the nose.
Yep.
Right.
That is sehr cool.
The base actually came from a different pumpkin project, but amazingly enough, was the right size.
It was the right diameter.
You didn't have to cut it down or anything.
No,
right?
I did have to cut a hole in it to feed the wires
Yeah,
through it.
it's all the whole part.
And then the face is black marker.
Oh no, it's opaque black paint. I went and bought a paint pencil. So basically, I have over 12 hours invested in this thing. That doesn't count the programming, which I did while it was printing, so I don't know if we count it or not. But there's 12 hours worth of printing, 14 hours worth of printing. I've decided that it's just cheaper to go to Walmart and buy a $2
No, really?
Well,
a $2 pumpkin
you said that cost you 7 cents.
and a lot of time.
And a lot of time.
Yeah,
And a lot of
if you
time.
value your time at
Yeah.
Zip, you know.
Well, but this is one of those things where the
maybe
pumpkin
I
isn't
was-
probably
Yeah.
the most ultimate project, but learning how to do the 3D programming or 3D printing, you say, I know how to do that, and I can do
Ideas start springing from that.
Yeah, exploded.
Because you realize, hey, it's opens a whole new vista.
What is the pair of contacts in the?
So it can run off of a 9-volt battery.
Okay.
It could actually run up to 12 volts. So,
So
he is given.
this is a voltage regulator in
Yeah.
here, I assume, right?
He is given multiple ways of running, of powering it, depending upon what you want to do. The USB jack is just for power; it's not for programming.
That is cool.
It is cool.
That is the troll, and I really wanted to show you guys like two or 3 weeks. I've been carrying it down here, but that's one of the projects, and of course, all the code for it is on GitHub. So we could actually look at the code if you wanted to. I can't program it because I didn't bring an Uno with me, so I can't reprogram it. Oh! Don't!
So the troll library.
Yeah. So I wrote. Wait a minute. I guess I've had it longer. Yeah, well, what did I say? About a month, 23 days was when I first uploaded it.
The troll spooky array. V2.
That would be the pumpkin. So that would be the spooky array. And blah blah blah. So you got these are all just hex values that reference the memory location on the external chip. But you've got this is the array. This is what I tried to make it easy. So there's the evil laughs, there's the zombie sounds, there's the scream sounds. So you don't have to remember a hex number to access the memory location. You just say evil laugh.
Where are you defining?
It's inside the library.
Okay.
It's inside of the troll.h.
So that came with, or did you?
No, I wrote that. Yeah. So this is where your sounds are at. Then we just using a standard Adafruit NeoPixel thingamabob. Do what?
Somebody's in my garage.
Oh.
Friend or foe? I mean, don't you have a different sound for friend or foe?
Oh, that should be in there.
And
Mailbox.
right here, this is where we're going to see if the dip switches need to be, if our trigger is going to be high or low. And that's just a function down here. So we're looking at switch 4, and if it's low, then we're going to make it high because we actually need to read a high value. The one thing that I did a little different in this sketch than I did in the other sketches was when it actually plays a sound, there's actually 2 numbers that it needs. It needs, because the sounds are different lengths. There are some that are 13 seconds long, and there's some that are half a second long. But I also wanted the lights to continue to do something. So what I did was I said all of them are actually 0 length, meaning that it will exit right back out and let me do something else. So here I'm doing like a link without delay kind of deal for the lights. So I'm comparing the millis to what the actual value
That's about it.
of the length of the sound should be. And it works mostly. It's some of the sounds it still exits too soon, but that's really about. So this particular one, I had to make some compensations because I was actually trying to do something else while I was playing the sound. Most of the other ones, I just let it play the sound and move on.
I need four pumpkins for the next week.
He's going to give me a dime for 4 pumpkins.
Well, going through
Only
and fiddling
48
around with
There's
the
7
duration of
7
sound
cents.
and the light.
28 cents.
Do what?
I said, going through and fiddling around,
Give me 30,
making the
give me
duration of the
20.
lights and the sound,
Right.
that had to be just a pain in the ass, trial and error.
Once that's what version 1 was. You saw. Once I actually saw what it was doing, it actually clicked pretty quickly what I actually needed to do to make it work.
Yeah, but still, you gotta go through and look at every one of them.
Oh, for the sounds, luckily, Patrick, who designed it and programmed the original sounds, already had a spreadsheet that had most of the links.
Okay.
Some of them I found when I was actually playing with it, some of them I found were either too long or too short. So yes, I did have to go through and kind of do it.
Tweak them a little bit.
Tweak them a little bit. But we're only talking about 58 sounds. So it was more of play the sound. And I actually pulled the chip out and stuck it in my little buddy talker to make it a whole lot easier to see. So I didn't have to keep pulling the Atmega out and reprogramming it. I could just pull the little buddy talker out and go, okay, that's not right. It needs to be this or whatever. But
So Patrick generated all the sounds.
Patrick generated all the sounds with a little help from his backers. He took suggestions about what to do. That the chip, if you have like the little buddy talker chip, most of those sounds are all under. Most of them are all under a second, and he's got 130 sounds on there or something like that, or words on there.
Oh, yeah.
So the longer the sound, the more space it takes up on that little chip. So that's why he could only get 58 sounds instead of 100 sounds.
So does Patrick have a website?
Engineeringshock.com. Did I put that in here? I think I put that in here. Yep, right there.
His was a troll and yours is a pumpkin.
Well, the troll is the board.
Okay.
The pumpkin was just me
Okay.
being
Being
go,
legal.
going, what can I do with this thing? Because I'm probably not going to prank my wife, even though I could. The grandkid actually found that like fascinating. Oh, it screamed at me. Yes, it did. But I honestly don't know. He did have some little buddy talkers left after the campaign, right? Because you bought one.
Right.
I honestly don't know if he's planning on selling these beyond. But since he had me since I volunteered and we wrote a library, my guess is they're going to be on his website sooner or later.
You don't think he's still making the little buddy talker?
Yeah, I think he is because I think he sells those.
Okay, yeah. Well, he went from 100 words to 254.
The Big Buddy Talker is over 1,000 words.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
That's getting a pretty good library, huh?
Yeah, that one was the one that was a pain
Yeah.
Let me do that one more time. Well, just one more time. Well, just one more time after that.
This writing this library was actually pretty easy, and because I had already wrote something very, very similar for the little buddy talker, it was easy just to go, we need this code, we need this code, and we need this, and then we adjust it around a little bit so that we get the sounds the right length.
What kind of phrases does he have in his library of 1,000 phrases or whatever? I mean, are they all like Halloween kind of things, or are
No,
they?
the talker is more. Even the one with I think it's 100 words.
Yeah.
And that one is he sort of focuses. Like for example, I use it for like they got front, rear, back, those type of things, and it has a lot of security type issues there. You know, like
Put your
like
hands
alert,
up, I'm going to shoot
like,
you.
yeah, it has like alerts. You know, alerts. and stuff like that.
It's individual words, not so
Right.
much phrases.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
So it's got like all your primary colors in there. It's got
oh.
stuff.
So it's got a vocabulary then, basically.
Yeah,
There's a
and the way it works is you pull the words down and you make a sentence, and then it does sound a little robotic
Yeah.
because sometimes the timings can be a little off, but
Can you change voices?
no, that is one. It,
Can't have-
because they're locked inside
You
of the
can't
chip.
have an English maid or whatever.
They're locked inside of that chip, and
Ah.
the Big Buddy Talker, he made, I think it's the alphabet. It says one of them's in a male English and one of them's a female English. But
Does he have a diphthong library?
a what? What?
Diphthongs are sounds that,
For
You put-
phonemes?
well,
Like vowel sounds and consonant
Yes.
sounds.
Yeah. No, that was actually suggested to him, and he didn't want to try to tackle that.
okay.
This is more like canned
Okay.
kind of things, and with the Little Buddy Talker, we did actually finally convince him to put stuff like ing and pre or post.
So you can have prefixes and postfixes.
So he did that for some things.
Okay.
the pre is like in there, but some of the other things that you would think like ed, like
Mhm.
sometimes that doesn't always work the way you would expect it to, or the way you would think that it should. Ing works most of the time, but because you're dealing with separate parts of the phrase, it
Yeah.
sounds a little weird
The
sometimes.
word transitions don't necessarily work.
Yeah. But that's that.
What have you used?
I use both. There's two different ones, and I showed both here. You're actually in California, sucking up the heat while we were freezing here. But I showed the two. I showed the two here. The Little Buddy Talker. Then there's one called the EMIC 2, and it's actually a speech to text. So you send it text, and it talks. And that's the one I used. Then the one that garbled the stuff. I showed it that sort of garbles it. But I also used the Little Buddy Talker also, and I have that one of those in the garage. Just I don't know for the heck of it, but it says like when that motion detector gets sensed in the garage, it'll say, let's see, motion. No, it says intruder alerts. Da 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 da. So,
Okay.
but it actually sounds better than the one I actually
Hi, everybody,
demonstrated
this is
last
the
week. It actually sounds a little bit. I mean, they all sound mechanical, but
I did something with the Arduino also, you know.
Yeah.
All the I found a web page where you can type anything and you can choose the speaker for any nation or any accent, and you produce the sounds in MP3 sounds.
sounds or it's a translation or
Tracks of sound files. Then you can use what's the name of the program? Audio City. The program,
Yeah.
the free one, open source Audio City. You import the MP3
oh
file,
right.
and you change for mono and change the resolution
Oh,
to make it smaller.
Audacity.
Audacity.
Audacity. Right. Okay. Yeah.
And then I use a program called Wave to See, and make a file that goes in Arduino as a file.
That's actually more or less what he's doing, only he's
but
writing
I
it
did
to a different.
all from scratch, you know.
Yeah.
There is a file in the web now where I put the
How's the voice sound? How's it sound?
It's
Still mechanical sounding though, but is it?
No, I just use the WAV file and create a PWM voltage proportional,
Yeah.
and a filter and just an amplifier and the speaker, and sounds great.
It does. I mean, does it sound?
I can bring it the next week.
I won't be here.
I made an alert for the
You'll
dog.
have to watch the
I'll watch the
recording.
video.
This is
Little Buddy Talker, my name is Patrick.
November, December, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
and on and
Sunday.
on and on. Could go through the whole 256 words, but that what he's talking about doing is basically what Patrick's done. Only he's stuck them on a small chip instead of on the 328. So that's that.
Very interesting.
Nice.
Another weird little thing that I've been working on this week. It's probably the same frustration that he's got, because it's part of his project.
Yes.
It's this GPS module. This is the receiver side of it.
Gypsy S.
I had some interesting issues with trying to get it working. I've actually gotten it pretty good, but there's still some drift in there, and it is telling me like a proper distance between the two modules now.
And how does it work?
There's actually,
Yes.
well, I don't know. It's part of his project. I don't know if he wants to explain.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Antenna.
There's going to be a GPS module on two separate things, and as they're cruising around, this one's supposed to know how far it is away from this one.
Yeah.
One is following the other. So-
I
so-
didn't really know how much.
Yeah, go ahead.
how
No,
much-
no, it's yeah, just go with it.
We'll slide a non-disclosure.
It's on the internet now, though. Internet non-disclosure.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
right.
Yeah, right. Non-disclosure.
Right.
So the one has a GPS on it, and it's supposed to transmit its location to the device that's following it. The device that's following it also has a GPS, and it's supposed to compare the two latitudes and longitudes together and come up with a reasonable distance between them. Part of the problem was the transmitter side, which just transmits, that's all it does, was overdriving the reception of the GPS. So I was not getting if I was getting a fix, it was not a good fix. I solved that more or less by taking the GPS receiver and sticking it 3 feet away from the transmitter. The receiver side doesn't seem to suffer from that problem, but that's probably because it's in receive mode, not in transmit mode. So the other problem that I'm facing right now is there is some drift, but my drift seems to be between 0 and 5 foot, and I think we need to get it a little closer to the 2 to 3 foot range.
What's the best accuracy you can get out of a GPS without doing triangulation or anything?
Depends.
How much money you got? That's right.
It depends on who you talk to, and whatever. But 10 meters seems like it's the thing, which is about 33 feet. So getting it even down close to 5 foot is pretty good.
I was reading an article. One of the things you may consider is that, and I can't remember the other technology they use. They use like 2 technology, GPS plus something else, to get them closer to it. You might, yeah.
Well, so there's also a MPU on board, which at this point I'm not using yet. But my thought was I could also be doing some dead reckoning. So if I knew where I started, and I did the accelerometers and read the accelerometers, I might be able to figure out where I'm at, maybe.
I have a question here.
I have an answer, but a good answer will cost you money.
Well, is it more expensive than printing a pumpkin?
No.
Okay, well, I can afford that then. Tell me what I'm looking at here on this small chip.
Okay, there's an MPU. That's the accelerometer and gyroscope.
Okay.
Right below that is the GPS antenna.
Okay.
The red board is the GPS board.
Right.
The board right above that is an Arduino Nano. Well, it's a clone Nano that has a NRF24 built onto it.
Okay, so is there a board within this that we can't see, or how does this chip connect to these?
It's magic right now because it's not connected at all.
Okay. Well,
I'm not using it yet. I'm trying to get the GPS.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at this thinking, well, maybe they're embedded in this plastic as a circuit board of some sort.
There's some magic going on right there.
Fingers never leave the hands.
Very good. You're paying attention.
Well, I generally do. I don't know what I'm paying attention to, but I am paying attention.
So what you're telling me is the gray base is just a solid piece of plastic. It's not.
I designed that base and 3D printed it, and I want to redesign it because after
But there's no wires embedded in it.
No, there's no wires.
Okay.
After I actually connected wires and stuff to it, I realized that everything pulls itself back out. So I've got to fix that.
What software do you use for designing 3D prints?
Tinkercad, just not great stuff, but it works.
Now, has anybody used resin printers?
Resin printer.
Resin printer.
So one of my thoughts on this whole GPS thing, though, is when we first discussed this, we were thinking about doing an RSSI kind of deal, which after many attempts of getting that to work fell through, but I have the transmitter. So I was thinking maybe I could just connect the transmitter up without a microcontroller, because it should just send it over and use the receiver, and then I would have all the information coming out of this sitting on the receiver on the microcontroller. I know that these transmitters are pretty stupid. I've hooked them up to audio before. I know that works. I don't know if it'll work for serial though.
How long does it take to acquire the GPS signal?
Well, that's part of my other problem. I've been inside the whole time. First time through, it takes about 12 minutes.
Ooh, okay.
But once it gets a time fix and a time lock, you can cut that down to about 3 minutes. And if you're outside, that 3 minutes turns into maybe a minute.
I was going with, can you just turn the transmitter off, get a lock, and turn it on and transmit?
I actually tried that, yeah.
That's too much time to acquire.
Well, not only that, but as soon as you turn the transmitter back on, it loses the fix.
Yeah.
And then you're back to, I gotta turn this thing off for another minute and a half, 3 minutes, and wait for another fix.
Yeah, if it was 5 seconds, that's doable. If it's a minute, that isn't.
The first time around, because these GPSs don't know where they are, or they've been tested in China or whatever, so they think they're in China still. It takes forever for them to get a time fix.
Huh.
But once they get a fix, once they get that first fix, they're actually pretty fast. And even inside,
Yeah.
I mean, 3 minutes inside was pretty good, considering that usually you don't get GPS inside at all.
Yeah, I'm asking because I don't know. Does anybody use the Iridium satellites to do geolocating?
That's the new ones, right?
No, they've been up for probably about 10 years. They were
Iridium, you're talking like the sat phones?
Yeah, the Iridium is what the trade name was for them. They just about went bankrupt, and then somebody rescued them.
Isn't that stuff like really expensive? I mean, GPS is relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
GPS transmits the signals for location. I don't think the Iridium sats do they?
I'm sure that there is
I'm asking. That's the reason why.
I'm sure that there is some sort of sync because it needs to know where that sat phone is.
And then it's my understanding that the GPS that's publicly accessible is no longer the best GPS that's in orbit.
That part is potentially true. They are updating the GPS system again.
Because I thought there was already in place a second generation GPS series of satellites.
We're probably on the third or fourth generation.
I was gonna say.
And there's more than just ours.
Yeah.
China has their own, Russia has their own.
And
Europeans have their own.
Yeah.
Then the alphabet soup has their own, obviously, but we don't have access to them.
Yeah.
But these GPS receivers are relatively inexpensive, and at least for testing purposes, to know if our idea actually is going to work, instead of spending thousands of dollars, we're spending
I'm not being critical.
$20
because I don't understand
$30 or
the
$50.
options, all of the options for getting your location. If GPS is down to 3 meters, that's pretty good for driving down the highway. But if you're landing an aircraft, being 30 feet off ain't so good.
Actually, you're probably better off 30 feet off on a typical landing strip than you are on a highway. 30 feet off on a highway is
The other
a
lane.
bridge.
The other lane.
Yeah, well, I'm only interested in am I headed towards Cincinnati or Dayton?
Well, that.
See, usually the height is not more precise. You need a very high resolution in the altitude for landing. precise distance between the plane and the field.
concrete.
They're not just using GPS for that either. They're using other.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going into, asking the question, what other things are available for
There's
getting geolocation?
there's you can do geofixes from acquiring cell towers. You can triangulate off of those. You can we know where all the transmitter tower, all the FM radio stations and TV stations are.
Okay.
You can triangulate off of those, but only if you've got good RSSI to do it, which runs into, you run right back into that. You need a lot of money to make that happen. So.
Well, I think these use the L1 band, what they call the L1 band, and there are receivers that also use the L2 band, and I think the military has these.
Is that like Lorraine stuff?
This is the first system used many years ago.
I mean, there are.
Not Loran.
This is
Lorraine, that's
old.
That's old, yeah.
Yeah.
That was all
That was for planes. and boats.
terrestrial based.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I was familiar with it, was from Salem.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that was all terrestrial based, and your phones get decent fixes because they're using a couple of different methods too. They're triangulating. They're doing what they call assisted GPS, and they're triangulating off of your cell towers. Your cell towers all ID where they're at, so it knows which cell tower it can talk to, and it goes, and if it can get 2 or 3 of them, it makes a good guess against the GPS and goes, okay, this must be where I'm at.
Okay.
And it corrects that with information from Google.
And well, and
Now
it's,
he's 7 feet to the left of that.
it's also a time slide. The time is very, very, very important with GPS.
Oh, absolutely.
So if your clock's off a little, even just a little bit, you could end up being
In the Pacific.
30 feet away. I mean,
So,
Or you
the
land on
cell
Gilligan's
towers
Island, they never get you
are
off that.
public information where they are?
Mostly.
there's a database of them, but I don't really know how to read that information now. Not cheaply.
Not cheaply?
AT&T publishes
Yeah,
where theirs are. I mean, I've
But-
got
but
that
how do you-
spreadsheet.
But what kind of device do you use to actually read that information, other than a cell phone?
Yeah, a cell phone. On that, if you want to play with it, I have a cell receiver, relatively cheap. I also have some USB GPS receivers that get a signal pretty quick. And they're on the 3-foot wire. They show up as a serial port.
Yeah.
TTY-ACN0 on my machines. You're welcome to use them if you want. I got them for another project quite a while ago and just never got around to it.
Oh.
And they have magnetic bases, which is handy.
We might do something. I don't know. I've been playing with this for a couple of weeks. I thought getting it down around, getting the drift down around 0 to 5 foot was pretty good, considering that the specs are somewhere between 3 meters and 10 meters.
Yeah.
But getting the drift down to between 0 and 5 foot isn't really good enough for what we're trying to do.
Well, not if it takes you 3 minutes to find out.
Oh, it won't take it. Actually, once it gets to sync, it maintains a sync for
So the updates are not
pretty fast. You actually get update, and the really, really cool thing, which I didn't really realize until I was playing with it with two of them sitting next to each other, once they actually sync, the little lights start blinking at the same rate. And it's like, oh, that's so cool, because they both got the sync at the same time. So, I had three of them going, and they were all going, blink, blink, blink. I'm like, oh, that's cool. The time to acquire the signal, the original signal, the first signal, it gets if you watch it on the serial terminal, it gets the time pulses, and eventually it will set the time first.
Mm-hmm.
Once it sets the time, it goes and it sets the date, and it's in UTC time.
Yeah.
So the date may not be what you think it will be, but the minutes are always right if you verify it against a clock somewhere. Once that happens, it takes another couple of minutes to actually acquire the signal and get a fix.
Yeah.
And then it will give you what do they call that? It's not it's like a confidence of what the fix is.
Quality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They don't call it that. They
No.
call it something else.
And what
But-
kind of numbers are you getting for that?
I'm inside.